So welcome everybody. So the title of this is Bridging the Hybrid Gap. And so I'm Mike Bills. I'm president of AtlasRTX. We provide sophisticated conversational AI digital workers that assist students throughout their entire journey, from exploration to application through to graduation. And it's my pleasure to introduce Cory Stokes, my friend, who is the Associate Dean, Digital Learning and University Connected Learning at the University of Utah. So Cory is one of the most knowledgeable and progressive thinkers about using technology to improve student learning outcomes. He's made not only a huge impact at the University of Utah, but across K-12 and higher education throughout the state of Utah. Cory is a go-to resource for higher education administrators. And what's really cool, he is also for EdTech entrepreneurs. So Cory has been a huge supporter of the Utah EdTech community. And anyway, we're all grateful to the impact Cory's given us. So as we progress, please post any questions into the chat. We'll do our best to answer them either during the discussion or at the end. So Cory, we were talking earlier and your role has shifted a little bit and the organization of it too. So the University Connected Learning organization looks like it has a really broad impact with continuing education, university on online, so online degrees that are offered purely online, and then digital learning throughout the university. So can you elaborate some on your responsibility within the University Connected Learning and what that organization does?
Yeah, I think if I really boil down what is the notion of this University Connected Learning unit that I'm a part of, it boils down to we talk about the three components being the people, the programs, and the platforms, right? And how do you bring those three things together in a way that really supports creating a broader connection for our community and out to the world as kind of a way to welcome more people into a University of Utah learning experience. So I have colleagues who oversee the people side of that, student support, and how are we really building that people support function. And then, of course, programs. What are the offerings that we're pursuing? Why are we pursuing particular offerings? And how are we marketing them? And making sure we're making that case for the value of that program. And then my area in particular, I really deal with leading the platforms side of that, the learning technologies, the media systems, and the instructional design and the learning experience creation that we build atop those platforms. So it's a nice combination of the three Ps that we call them: the people, the programs, and the platforms.
So when we were talking earlier, we talked about that a lot of institutions will still have those learning technologies housed under IT.
Yeah.
And so we were talking about why it's optimal to have it organized under your group. So can you explain some of why you guys are organized that way and how that's beneficial to students?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to a core focus on that learning experience, right? IT does well at many universities, and I have many friends who are CIOs and IT managers. They do a wonderful job, but their focus really is on security, on reliability, on operational excellence. And sometimes that doesn't always lead to that extra step of saying, what's really the learning experience that needs to happen here to lead to the outcomes that we want? And so having learning technologies really, really close to the programs and having that constant dialogue day in and day out with people who are thinking about those learning outcomes that we're really trying to accomplish, that gives strength to us choosing the right platforms, really thinking about how we tie technologies together to create an experience that leads to students and the instructors having those valuable interactions and having them in a seamless way. And so I think that's the value of really saying, let's put this close over in this group that's all about creating that welcoming and interacting experience.
So at a lot of colleges and universities, the notion of of on-campus and online are segregated. So they operate in silos. They may, and those that operate in one unit may not even ever meet the people in another unit. So the U's been offering a critical mass of online courses and degrees for many years now. In fact, most undergraduate students, and you'll have to tell me the answer, but probably at least 2/3 of online of undergraduate students are going to take at least some online courses. So there's been an integration, at least of the degrees, so they're not necessarily siloed, although you certainly have some online only degrees.
Right.
So how has that synergy between online and on campus affected your choice of technology and also how you communicate and stay connected with students?
That's a great question, and one that we grapple with constantly. In no way are we like the shining light of online education in higher education, but we've found our path. And it really started with the notion of creating a hybrid university experience. For many years, we had faculty that were experimenting with different ways to approach online teaching. And I'm talking like the early 2000s and forward, just kind of how do you weave technology in, but there was nothing formal going on. Around 2014, the provost at the university approached me and really, we had a conversation about how do we create a much more intentional experience of a hybrid university, with the real goal of saying we need to do much better at retaining the students who do start programs with us and getting them to graduation on time, because that's the real value for a student. Stay here, get your degree quickly, and get out into the workforce or whatever your next step in life is. Because universities, while being one of the greatest experience of your life, will also be one of the most expensive experiences of your life. Right. And so we need to help people move through that investment and start gaining the return on that investment as soon as possible. And so it started with the notion of how can we create many what we call online flex courses, hundreds of courses, especially in general education or gateway courses into degree programs, to really help students that want to take 15 credit hours or more, but for some reason can't get the schedule to line up with their work schedule and their family schedule and everything else that's going on in their life. How could we make it so they could take 1 or 2 online courses each semester with their on-campus course and flex that schedule much more easily? Of course, when you go down that path, it's not too long before you begin to say, we could probably now carve off and do some intentional online only programs. And so that's where we looked at building this portfolio of 20 and still growing online only programs that now we can take out and really extend the footprint of the University of Utah regionally and nationally and internationally, but also demographically. How can we reach more people who would like to have a University of Utah learning experience, but for whatever reason in the conditions of their life, that's not possible? And if we free them up from time and location restriction, suddenly we make that possible.
So another way, well, another benefit then of the approach to online has been that you've been able to incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion by expanding the universe of both terms of probably age and stage and other demographics that wouldn't be able to just be there on campus between the ages of 18 and 24.
Yeah, in fact, I would, in looking at the demographics of our typical online student at the University of Utah, they're going to be over the age of 26, and they're more likely to be female than male. And it used to be that they were more likely to be part-time students, but we're seeing that begin to actually shift toward more full-time. As we get more online offerings, as we're more intentional and we create those really well-designed pathways, we can influence whether or not a student is part-time or full-time. And so it is really a way of inviting people who have some college and no degree to come back and finish. It's a way of reaching people who, for whatever reason, at that magic moment between high school and the next thing, were not ready to engage or were not capable, for whatever reason, of entering into a higher education experience. We can reopen that opportunity for anybody who is willing to prepare to come into a University of Utah learning experience.
So I took a look at your most recent IPEDS data, which is probably now about a year old. And then I went back to 2012 to just look at what had happened broadly in terms of, and obviously IPEDS misses a whole lot of information because it's only going to start with, those that start at the U. But nevertheless, at least it's measuring the same things over that course. So during that time, you can see that huge change in the number of students that were taking some online courses, which makes a lot of sense if you look back to 2012 versus 2022. Yeah. There's been a material increase in the number of students. So enrollment, and a lot of times you might expect if you admit more students, have more online students, open up the demography and become more inclusive, that maybe your retention and your graduation numbers will suffer. I think that might be the wonderful thing, Cory, is your numbers, they don't bear that out at all. In fact, you got better in retention and graduation. So because academic support and community are so correlated with good outcomes there, what have you guys done to maintain community and connection with students that might not have the same kind of connection that students had in 2012?
Yeah, I think there's been a concerted effort to create what we have termed a more integrated student experience, where we try and take parts of universities that easily become siloed and help them connect better. And I'm talking in broad terms. I would say, if you looked at the recruiting experience, and what are we doing with students as we're recruiting them and talking to them about the value of coming to this university, how do we bridge them from the recruiting experience into the retention experience, advising them, keeping them on their pathway, and then how do you take that retention experience and make sure that we're weaving it in with the learning experience? And then I think the final quadrant there is what I call the connection experience. How do I take their learning experience and help them translate into how to tell their stories? They go out from the university and present themselves to employers, or they're moving on to a graduate school, whatever is the next phase of their life. How do we help them understand the experience that they had and be able to connect that with the next experience that they're moving to in life? And so the recruiting experience, the retention experience, the learning experience, and the connection experience, to us, that is that integrated journey that we're trying to go through. And it's not easy because there are a lot of offices and staff and people that are involved in the university to tie those things together. And what it really comes down to is how are you, and this is where I'm going to take kind of my IT bend, but it's the notion of there's a core set of data that you have to tie together so that you can have a better holistic picture of a student and what's happening with them. I think one of the weaknesses that we've had in higher education is we've always had the student record, and we just look at what's in the student information system. Well, that doesn't tell us a whole lot about that student. It gives us some demographic information, and it tells us what they're signing up for in their schedule. And their grade, right? But that's not a whole lot of information to really build that rich sort of journeys with that student. So we started and said, if we have these four quadrants that we're dealing with, what's the data that we actually have to be dealing with? So it's the student experience, But then we've got to add the relationship experience. And a lot of that is coming out of your CRM system if you have one. What's the communication stream that all of these different offices and entities at the university are having with this student? And where's that data and how are you collecting it and using it? I look at the curriculum data. What is the pathway this student is on? What degree are they declared to? What's the optimal path that they should or could be following for that? But also what other learning opportunities might be related. So we've got to understand our curriculum data and have that as part of the picture. And then finally, I talk about the behavioral data. What is the student actually doing when they're with us? How often are they logging into the learning management system? How are their scores as compared to other students in their section, but also historically students who have gone through this class? Are they communicating with their professors? What are they doing behaviorally that we can understand that's unique about this student? And when we tie all that together, student information, relationship information, curriculum information, and behavioral information, now we have a big pool of data that we can begin to surface real insights about this student. And not this student just as a persona, but this student as a person, because we're taking everything that we know about the context that's a part of them and adding that uniqueness of their individual behavior.
So how are you taking all of those disparate systems and then integrating them together? Because there's technical challenges to that. There's probably political challenges to that. There may be security concerns about that. So how are you bringing that all together? And then also, what actions are you taking when you have that all complete?
Yeah, and I would say, how are we doing it? We're doing it in an evolutionary sort of approach, and we're not there yet. It's years of work and effort to try and really bring that together. And surprisingly, with data, that unification of data is a lot of relationship building with people. It's having the CIO really be bought in as a key stakeholder in this, having the vice president of enrollment management bought in, your vice president of academic affairs and your curriculum management has to be bought in. And it's getting that executive buy-in. But then for us, we've had a really great success in creating a group of directors, the functional directors that control a lot of these different services and offices and platforms that are serving students. We pull them all together on a monthly basis in what we call the integrated student team. And that's about 30 to 35 directors, from admissions to financial aid to gen ed office, connected learning. We're all in a room together, sometimes a Zoom room, but on a monthly basis, we get together and we talk about how are we moving a student from this to that, and where are we creating artificial barriers that don't need to be there? Where do we have data that needs to flow, and where do we need to be able to open those governance gates? And what governance do we need to ensure we're wrapping around that data? We have those critical conversations by having this integrated student team, which is really a portfolio management group. They look at the 40 some odd initiatives that are being pushed forward by various units involved in this student experience, and they prioritize. And we say, these things need to come to the top and be worked on first, because these things below them have dependencies on getting that right. And so I would say the way that we do it is a lot of conversations, connections, and trust building between the people, and then the data flows across those relationships and that trust network.
Cool. Well, I have been amazed at how deliberate, because you make this sound easy, but I've been amazed at how deliberate you've had to be and thinking years ahead about how you're going to pull all these data sources together and make them actionable. Anyway, I appreciate your humility there, Cory, but I had a little, not necessarily a front row seat, but maybe in the cheap seats, I was able to see what you guys were doing. So anyway, that's this is in fact, I would encourage people to reach out to Cory about how he has led some of those big change management issues at a great big institution that of course, if you've been around an R1 institution, it's like a freaking city that operates 24/7. So pulling these people together is no small feat. So Cory, when we back in 2020, when it looked like we were going into COVID, we had some you and I had spoken and said, hey, we might end up going fully virtual here any day now. And I was working with a couple hundred colleges and universities at the same time who were at different levels of readiness. But I would say you were the best as far as readiness. And so that wasn't luck. And so I guess I've got two questions about that. What do you think made you guys better prepared to be able to go fully remote? And again, because I tend to think of it from a faculty standpoint, having been one, I would have not been prepared to teach online at all. I didn't go into it for that reason. It would have seemed burdensome and a hassle to me that I would have reluctantly done because I had to. So there's that element of it, but just the sheer making sure people were moving through and being able to get connected anyway. So why were you better prepared? And then what have been the lasting changes that have resulted subsequently?
I think it really came down to, first of all, choosing the right platforms. So we were very careful and intentional as we built our core technology stack, especially around how we deliver the learning experience. We chose a learning management system that had very open standards. And we selected a media management system that seamlessly fit into that learning management system, so much so that faculty and students really don't know that they're in another platform as they're interacting with it. And then you continue to add on the helper tools that make that open learning management platform strong. And so it's that notion of, for a student, all they need to know is, I go to my class platform, and it gets me to the resources that I need, right? The students just know, I just go to class, and the resources that I need will be linked from there. That then led to once you have that foundation of a good standards-based, modern, data-enabled environment, then it was a matter of, when we approach this hybrid university strategy, the side benefit of that is that in any given year, we have 18 to 19,000 students who take an online course. Learning online was not new to our student body. In any given year, we will have almost half of the students take at least one online course. So it wasn't scary, it wasn't new. Most of them had taken an online course before. And so making that shift wasn't as difficult from a class perspective. Now, the faculty, it's a little more of a lift, because we have about 500 faculty who regularly teach an online course. They were fine. It's those other 5,000 various instructors and people who didn't do that every day. Onboarding them onto this platform a lot of it was automation. Really just saying, we're going to turn on the class environment for you. Here's a recipe for how you can get set up quickly inside the platform. Don't get fancy, just survive, and here's how you'll do it. And then I think the last part of that was having a good core set of the support services at the university. Because we had this online activity going on already, we had advisors who already knew how to meet with students virtually. It wasn't a lot, but they were meeting with, at that time, probably 3 to 10 students a week in a virtual meeting. So they knew how to do this. It was just a matter for us of making sure that We had the technologies scaled out to now take on this greater load. But the fundamental people that a student needed to interact with, from their financial aid counselor to their professor and instructor to their advisor, a lot of these people had experience because we had started down this road with flexible online offerings. And so as we created that flexibility for the university, we were actually helping to future-proof the university without actually knowing that's what we were doing. And it worked out well for us.
And so what have been the lasting changes?
I think the lasting changes have been the students now expect us to meet them in a different way. I was talking with you earlier about when I went to college, I lived at that junction between, to get registered for a class, I first had to go stand in a line and fill out a paper and hand it to someone. And in 48 hours, I'd know if my schedule was met. Then they opened up telephone registration, and I could wake up, I was a college student. I could call in at 1 a.m. on the morning when the system opened, and I could punch numbers on my phone and get registered. Now, students today, they really expect to be able to go into an app maybe weeks in advance and say, I know what my work schedule is going to be for fall semester. System, tell me, you know what major I need to do. You know what classes I need to take. You know when those classes are scheduled. Help me assemble a schedule and then put it in my shopping cart so I can buy it. That's the kind of expectation that our students have now. Our students now expect that if they have a question about how this complex university works, they want to be able to ask it at 10 o'clock at night and get that answer. And that doesn't always mean that we have 24/7 people. That's an unsustainable, unscalable model for us as a university, to have all of these offices and service points staffed 24/7 by actual people. So we're having to think about, how can we take basic information about the university? How can we drive information out and make it accessible without this massive scaling of staffing and hours? And so I think that's where we stand right now, is really understanding the power of technology. And this might be controversial, but don't be afraid of this. The notion of how could we take our level 1 service desk in many aspects, whether it's the IT service desk or basic questions for an advisor like gen ed requirements. Where are we giving level 1 service desk type information that should just be available all the time, and make it available through an interface that's easy for the student to just tap to on a mobile device, get the answer? That's what they expect from us. We've got to get there faster as higher education.
Sure. Well, Cory, I appreciate you making sort of a sales pitch on what we do, because obviously we are in the business of automating those activities and being a digital workforce. And so for us, my take on it is that in no way should we work to try to replace people, because people are amazing at being empathetic and explaining things to people, and understanding, being able to read the room, read the person, where it's, AI is not that sophisticated. It can't do that. Maybe, and maybe one day it will. That might be a scary place to end up. But the state of computer science right now is, when done well, you can do an awful lot with automation to free up humans to do those things that humans are much better at doing than some kind of robot in the cloud. But those robots in the cloud can do things way better, some things way better than people, like be available 24/7 and respond immediately, and do so in whatever language you happen to speak. So and I tend to think of trying to think of a team, and not, again, just like the University of Utah, it didn't silo off online and on campus. It brought them together. I think of a team as, you've got the digital team doing what it can do, and the human team doing what it can do as well. And your point about being able to make a phone call to register for classes. I too experienced that transition. I'm of the same vintage, and that was revolutionary because I also was a student that had a full-time job, and so doing things on campus, just getting to go into class was hard enough. Doing anything else, obtaining service, was such a hassle and such a burden. A lot of times it required me to miss work, and so there's another piece of automation that can actually, you mentioned online courses has enhanced the DEI efforts at the U, and these technologies can also do so as well. So I just and I really don't know the answer to this question, but what are some of the services that you've now been able to make available 24/7 that would have been on campus, and what remains that you might need to add some automation to?
Well, I'll say that I don't know that we have really been able to cross that line yet of saying we now have this service available 24/7. We're certainly not mature in this space. We understand where we want to go, and we know where we need to be for our students. We think we have those relationships and those connections across the different silos of the university to really step forward in this realm. But it's an ongoing effort to now be able to build the technology infrastructure and the enabling infrastructure so that we can turn on those 24/7 answers for students, right? And I'm careful to say that is that we know, like you said, it's not about delivering 24/7 full service,
right?
Because the human being is important. It's about delivering 24/7 answers or guidance. And sometimes that guidance is, I can tell you this much, and I'm going to help you get connected and scheduled with a person who can take this where it needs to go. And so that's where we're really trying to figure out right now is, where do we have the knowledge base of policies, procedures, pathways, rules that we can assemble together and expose out through 24/7 access? And I'm talking more than putting it on a website.
Yes, of course.
We've got to simplify the interaction with the student. They shouldn't have to search and cull through a website to find that information. They should be able to ask a question.
Exactly.
And surface that information to them. And I think about my friends in the advising community. And these are some of the most student-centric people you will ever meet. They're caring individuals. No one wants a student to succeed like an advisor wants a student to succeed. But their trouble is they have such an advising load. And how do they get the time to spend the quality time with that individual and get them where they need to be when they're having to answer all these other really rudimentary questions, fundamental questions that we could shift off and say, that could be an instant access answer with a smart guidance, finding that answer so that this person's time is freed up to do that deeper engagement and coaching and help. That's where we want to be. That's where we're really looking to say, what are the key communication streams we need to establish with students? What needs to be flowing in those streams? And then how do we connect them with answers and guidance that really gets them on the right path quicker so that we retain them and we get them to graduation faster?
Right. Yeah. So at the University of Utah, your ratio of an advisor to student is probably 1 to 100 students, or a couple hundred students, where then you'll have, you go out on the spectrum to less resourced institutions like community college, and it could be 1 to like 800 students. And so there will never be able to staff up enough to be able to support all of those students. So it does seem that that's an area where marrying technology and people would really provide the best benefit for students.
Yeah, and I think that there's actually real opportunity. The real opportunity that I see, and now I'm thinking like big picture stuff, is to go beyond what we know and the advising that we know how to give them, and start to discover those things that we don't know. And And in this, I really think about those connection experiences. I think there's a lot of opportunity for all of us to learn about students that are in this major, or students who have this goal in a career, that they know where they want to go. They kind of know the industry they want to work in. They can tell us that. But we have amazing data today in things like Open Skills Network and other entities out there that are gathering tons of information about the skills that are aligned with particular industries and jobs. We can draw that data back to us, combine it with what we know about a student. And what if we can begin to actually provide insights to a student that says, you're in this degree, we know you want to go into this industry. Here are some skills that you'll probably want to add to your degree to make sure and make you a more well-rounded candidate for where you want to be going. And I think that opportunity to understand those, what my colleague at University of Central Florida, Tom Cavanaugh, calls sidecar certificates. That's a real opportunity in the data set that we can begin to surface for students and help them understand, this is the course of study in the major that you're in. These are other skills that, based on the trajectory that you're saying, you really should be thinking of adding these kinds of learning experiences to that. And it doesn't have to be like getting a full minor or anything. Sometimes it's going to the continuing education or professional education unit and picking up a couple of classes in digital communication or statistical analysis. It's just those little skill packets that added to your major make you that much more interesting when you go in for the interview that you're really excited about as you come out of the university.
Well, Cory, thank you for that awesome suggestion. I don't have any good ideas. I'm just smart enough to listen to you, and then I'll go figure out some way that we can do go after that with some technology. So Cory, we do have a question here that is a good one, and that is, have you encountered university members on either side of the house, online, traditional, brick and mortar, that are hesitant to your mission of being intentionally hybrid? How have you worked through any of those challenges, or those reluctant if they exist?
Yes, absolutely. I think anybody at any institution of higher education encounters this hesitancy to break out of the traditional. And it's understandable. And usually I hear it expressed as, if we open this up online, it's going to rob, students are going to do that instead of showing up to my class. I can say, after years of being in the online space and online flex offerings with a major university, thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of credit hours, the data does not bear that narrative out. That's a myth. But you have to build that data picture for them. You have to use the data to show that when you open up flexibility for students, you don't lose students from the on-campus experience. You invite students who were having to leave to stay. Mm. And so you actually usually see greater participation. A great example is our chemistry 2010 course. It's a general education gateway course. Students have to take Chem 1210. We opened up 2 sections of chemistry online to go along with, I think it was probably 6 sections that we offer on campus. And these are big sections, 200, 300 students. The on-campus sections still filled up, because students who were on waiting lists and not being able to get into that class that semester suddenly had capacity if they wanted as an on-campus experience. So the waiting lists just filled those sections, and the online sections also filled. So I think that we in higher education simply don't see the unmet capacity. Where are we artificially throttling things? And we really don't understand how many students wish they could have gotten into our course, wish that they could have stayed at the university and continued their studies. We're blind to them. They just disappear to us. So I would say an approach is find a way to experimentally open it up in one key area, gather the data, and tell the story with the data, because I'm certain that you'll find that online and flexible offerings do not rob students from the on-campus experience. Students will naturally migrate and choose the path that fits their life situation, and you'll invite more students into that experience in that course than you thought were out there.
That is such an awesome point, Cory, that they're not in competition with one another. This is not zero sum. It's additive and inclusive. Well, so it is, we're right at 45 minutes. And whenever I do any type of presentation, I typically I cannot promise to not be boring, but I can promise to bring it home on time. So I'm going to bring this one home here on time. And Cory, I thank you so much. It's always a pleasure for me to talk to you, and I'm certain that our audience got a lot of takeaways from this. So, Cory, I look forward to seeing you in the Marriott Library next time I'm on campus, and thanks for joining, everybody.